Hello, BookTube. I hope you had a good Christmas and a good holiday and had a good New Year or start to the New Year so far. I know I sure did, which is brings me to the purpose of this video. This video is to showcase a massive used book haul that I just had. And before I get to the books, I should preface with 2 points. 2 points. The first one is, if some of you actually watch my videos and remember, a few weeks back I did a video detailing my modified version of the Read What You Own challenge, or the Read 100 Books challenge. Um, and I'm still doing that, but I forgot to point out in that video when I wanted to start, when I wanted to actually start the challenge, because I knew that something like this was going to happen. And so my goal was to start it in the new year in 2023, not when I made that video. So acquiring all these books does not break my wish to continue with that challenge, or to start that challenge, because I have not started it yet. And the second one is, uh, what was the second one? Oh yes, the second one was, I set my goal as 80,000 words instead of reading 100 books, because I thought that would be easier. Now that I've done a lot of thinking on that, it's not even close. 80,000 pages will take me a lot longer than it will take me to read 100 books, physical books on my shelf. I actually did calculations of some of my shelves, and this shelf here and this shelf here, let's see, this one over here, both combined to just under 30,000 pages worth of books, and yet that's over 50 books. So you can see the difference there. If I only did 30,000 pages, if that counts only towards 30,000 pages, I'm not even halfway done my 80,000 page challenge. And then if I did 100 book challenge, then I would be well over, uh, well, more than 50%. And so I thought about doing a video to uh, modify my modified version of the Read What You Own challenge, and maybe cut my limit in half to 40,000 words, or even something much more doable like 20,000. Uh, but now, considering the amount of books that I just purchased, this is a used book haul, um, so I didn't spend a terrible amount of money, but still, I bought just a ton of books, over 40 books. So I need to justify this purchase by uh, saying that I probably will just continue with having 80,000 as my goal. And if it just really becomes unbearable, then I might change it. But as of now, this is how it's going to stay. But without further ado, I'm going to get to the books, because, well, it's going to take a while. And so the first set of books, this stack here and another stack beside, these are mostly classics, and if you've also watched some of my other videos, you will know that I'm doing my own version of a Western Canon reading list, and a big chunk of these books will fit on that reading list, which is one of the main reasons why I bought them. And another reason why I bought them, some of these books, uh, some of them are duplicates, because works in translation, I love to collect many different translations of the same work, and whenever I can find a cheap edition uh, of a translated work that is a translation I don't already have or have read, then I'll absolutely pick it up. And so that's a big example of today as well. And that starts off with the first book. The first book is Aristotle's Ethics. This is an old Penguin Classic edition. This is by a translation by J.A.K. Thompson. The translation, I think, is from the 50s, right? Yeah. Originally published in the 50s, but then this one was revised in 1976. And this is my second edition of Aristotle's Ethics. I have not read it yet, but my other edition is a more recent translation with a lot more notes than this one has, but this is another translation, and I'll definitely take it. The next book is also Aristotle. This is Aristotle's Poetics, and this one's much shorter. Even this is deceiving. It's not even, it's barely 50 pages, the actual work by Aristotle, and yet it's extremely influential, which is why it's on my Western Canon reading list. I should mention that I do have all of Aristotle on ebook, free ebook, free translation that's in the public domain. It's like a scholar did the entire works of Aristotle in public domain, or in a translation years and years ago. So now it's in the public domain, and I have that as a complete ebook, so the complete works of Aristotle. But these are much more recent translations, because this one I believe was in the 70s. When was this one? 1996, and this was translated by Malcolm Heath. And the last Aristotle is On the Soul. I'm not going to try the Latin title. On the Soul. This is translated by Hugh Lawson Tancred, and it is 1986. See, these are, they seem relatively old compared to my age, but compared to the public domain translation that I have on ebook, these are much, much newer. And I love collecting translations, and even the scholarly apparatus will be interesting, and different introductions to these works will be worth the cost of the book themselves. And then we get into some plays, starting off with Sophocles, the three Theban plays, Antigone, Oedipus, I can't say that, Oedipus the king, Oedipus at Colonus. Sorry, I've only read these titles. I've never actually tried to say them out loud before. This is translated by Robert Fagles. I read the Fagles Iliad and Odyssey. I read the Odyssey, the Fagles Odyssey this year, and then the Fagles Iliad last year. And this one is translation done in the 80s, I believe, before he did. Yes, early 80s. Before he did the Iliad and the Odyssey, he did Sophocles. And I do have a copy of these exact plays, but in a different translation. The earlier Penguin translation from the 50s, actually, sitting on my shelf back there. So a nice newer translation. And then I have these two works. It is the Greek Tragedies, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and this is from University of Chicago Press, and these are edited by David Gren and Richard Lattimore, and these are exactly what they say, the Greek tragedies. So they include Aeschylus's Agamemnon and his Prometheus Bound. They include Sophocles' Oedipus the King, Sophocles in his Antigone, Euripides' Hippolytus, and then on Volume 2 they go back to Aeschylus for the Liberation Bearers, Sophocles for Electra, and Euripides for Iphigenia in Tyrrhus, Electra, and the Trojan Women. So it looks like 4 by Euripides combined. It's 4 by Euripides, 3 by Sophocles, and 3 by Aeschylus. And again, these are different translations. I think these are all from the 50s. It's varied. It's from the 40s to the 60s. Because they got many different translators. At least this volume itself has 3 translators, and Volume 2 has four translators of the different works. So that's this 2-volume set. The next volume is Plautus, 4 comedies. This is a Roman playwright, and he's known for his comedies, which were incredibly influential. This one includes The Braggart Soldier, The Brothers Maniacus, The Haunted House, and The Pot of Gold. And this is translated by Eric Segal. And this translation, I believe, was from the 90s. Yeah, 1996. And these two I consider some of the best finds of the day. Uh, what incredible finds, I think. It just reinforces why I love used book shopping, because you just never know what you're going to find. But, as you see, two classics, 2 volumes of Livy. I don't have any Livy in anything other than a public domain translation on ebook. And this is uh, the Dawn of the Roman Empire, books 31 to 40, and then the second volume here is Hannibal's War, books 21 to 30. So I got books 21 to 30 and then 31 to 40. And this one is the older one, as you can... actually, no. Yeah, let's see if I don't get confused. Anyways, I'm going to go with this one. Books 31 to 40 is a translation by J.C. Yardley. And this translation, I believe, is from 2000. And the second volume of Livy is books 21 to 30, also by J.C. Yardley, but this one is from 2006. And it is a bit interesting how these earlier books, books 21 to 30, is a newer translation by the same person as the other book, which is books 21 or 31 to 40, and that's from 2000. And they each have different. I guess I should mention who the notes and the introductions are, because this volume has notes and introduction by Waldemar Heckel, and this one has notes and introduction by Dexter Hayos. Love to have love finding Livy there. Now the next book was a steal I just couldn't pass up. The Norton Anthology of Drama, Volume 1. And I just love that cover. Beautiful cover. Love Norton anthologies. I have so many of them, and finding them for dirt cheap like this. This volume is over 1,700 volumes and pages, and this volume 1, there's 2-volume set. This is volume 1 in a 2-volume set. This one is Antiquity through the 18th century. So it comes with a nice meaty introduction. And then it has a play by Aeschylus, 2 by Sophocles, 2 by Euripides, 1 play by Aristophanes, Plautus has 1 play, Seneca has a play, Shadraka has a play, Gandersheim, I think there's 2 plays here, or maybe 1, maybe that's just 1, Han King, yeah, they include all sorts of different classical plays from not just Europe, but from I think some Chinese or Japanese or whatever these playwrights are from. I'm not entirely sure. But then they also include some medieval plays like the Second Shepherd's play, the play Everyman, Spanish tragedy, a play by Christopher Marlowe, and then they include 2 Shakespeare plays, Ben Jonson, John Webster, Molière, Alfred Ben, Racine, Goethe. Yeah, they end off with Goethe. Faust Part 1. But yeah, they include... This one has, I think, around 30, just over 30 plays from that large period that it tries to cover. And that's if I had to have just one edition of that 2-volume anthology of plays, that's the one I would choose. A lovely classic, or the older plays. And then starting on my second stack of classics, we start off with The Prince by Machiavelli. And this edition is translated and edited by Daniel Dono. And this edition, I believe, is from the 60s. Yeah, this translation is from the 60s. I usually don't care for Bantam classics because they just reprint the cheapest public domain classics, but this one is an actual copyrighted, relatively recent translation. So I picked it up. It also includes a little bit of selections from his discourses, but I have his entire discourses on ebook, so that's what I'll probably just read the entire entirety of those there instead of reading the short selection here. But the Prince is here in its entirety. This one I thought was a really cool find. This is Jean Froissart, and this is his chronicles. He was a contemporary of Chaucer, and he wrote down a history or a chronicle of the 100 Years' War, which was just a really long and drawn-out series of conflicts between England and France at the time in Chaucer's day, and then ending in the mid to late 15th century. And this will be absolutely fascinating. This translation is by Geoffrey Brereton, and it was translated in 1968 and revised in 1978, so about 10 years later. But I love this find. This find was, I mean, it's just, you don't know what you're gonna find, and it's awesome. And then this one is Cretin de Troyes, Arthurian Romances, an Everyman paperback. This is translated by D.D.R. Owen, and this one was this translation is from 1987. And I already have a complete edition of Cretin de Troyes' Arthurian Romances. I have the Penguin Classic edition on my shelf, but finding another translation is just a treat, I think. This one is a bit of an oddity. This is Thomas Aquinas, A Summary of Philosophy. This is a Hackett book. I love Hackett books. They can be really adventurous, but yet odd in their selection. They're made for schools, but and they're curiously bland-looking books. But I think there's something kind of striking to it. I have a few of their editions. This is translated and edited by Richard Regan, and I read a little bit of his introduction, and this is not barely a selection even of Aquinas, because it's really tiny, as you can see. And what he does is he takes Thomas Aquinas' own words to certain issues, like what was that? He divides them into topics. So God, creation and governance, the soul, the ultimate human end, happiness, human acts, moral goodness and malice, love, habits, virtue, and law. And then he divides them into a series of questions, and then provides Thomas Aquinas' response. But Thomas Aquinas' responses are heavily edited to clean out all of his references and allusions to other philosophers or other works of, or other, basically other philosophers and other major thinkers and other theologians. So it's just when you're reading that, you're just reading what Thomas Aquinas thought on these issues, instead of having to dig through what he thought through all his allusions and references to other people in the past. And the whole point of this book is to provide a general introduction to Thomas Aquinas' thinking on certain issues. There's that. Let's see. The next one, I guess I can introduce these both. There are two different editions of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I had to read this for my first year of philosophy, first year of English in my first year of university. This edition is translation of not just the Gawain and the Green Knight, but the other two poems that are a part of the Gawain manuscript, because we only have one surviving manuscript of Sir Gawain, this poem, and it comes with Patience and Pearl as well. And this is a verse translation by Marie Boroff, and this translation is, I think, it's from the 60s, and I think it's been revised a couple of times. It's no longer the Norton. This is the Norton Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. They have a newer translation in their anthology that I actually had to read. And then this edition is a Broadway edition, or no, Broadview edition. And this is just the pure text itself. This is not a translation. This is the Middle English and lots of notes, which I thought was really cool. And I tried reading a little bit, and it's completely different from Chaucer's Middle English. You don't even get a hint of some of the words on here. But I thought it would be really cool to have, and maybe struggle my way through it at one point. It's not that long, so it shouldn't be that difficult if I can stay consistent. And this is edited by Paul Battles. So I got a translation, and I got the original. And now this, I think it's safe to say that this next book, these next 3 books are the finds of the entire mail haul, or the entire used book haul. And because these are books that I've been really, really wanting to buy for quite a long time, but buying them new, they're like $30 each. And it's a 3-volume, and if I want to buy them all together, it's 3 volumes. And so if I buy them all together at $30 a piece, that's $90 plus tax. It's over $100. Instead, I got these 3 volumes, used, of course, but for less than $20. And I'll show you what they are. This is The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Gibbon, and this is volume 1. And this is the Modern Library edition. And it's a nice, big, meaty thing. It doesn't give me a date on when this was printed. I know, of course, when Gibbon wrote this thing. He wrote this in the 1700s, late 1700s. And this edition is over 1,300 pages. And it's in good shape, too. Just a wonderful, wonderful edition. And this book, this volume, saved me, because, as you'll see, it does not match with my next 2 volumes. This is The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Volume 2, and this is Volume 3, and these 2 are the Penguin Classics. The Penguin Classics are the ones that I've had my eye on for a really long time, because they're still in print, and this, I should say, this is edited with an introduction and appendices by David Womersley, and they only had Volume 2 and 3 of the Penguins, and actually they had 2 copies of the second edition. I got the better copy. It was the same price, so why not? But they had this volume, the Modern Library Volume 1, and this one actually includes a lot more than what's in, will include some of what's in here. I think, like, up to here or something. First 300 pages or so are included in here, because this includes so much. So, what I can do is, if I can read through this entire volume and just skip to wherever this volume leaves off, and then just continue reading. Or if I want, I can start this one from the beginning and just leave off the last few hundred pages in here. The only downfall is that I lose out on David Womersley's Womersley. I lose out in his introduction because I don't reprint it in each of the volumes. These volumes are just the edited material, or the actual complete Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, and then the appendices by David Womersley. So I lose out on having an introduction, but having the entire work, something that I've been wanting for a long time, That was a steal in my estimation. Um, I'll pause this for a sec as I grab the other books. Okay, looking at the time, I noticed that I'm over 25 minutes, so I think I'll just do this small stack of books, and then I'll do the rest in a part 2. And so we start off with a bit of philosophy and uh, just a mixture, a little bit of a mixture of books. But anyways, this one is philosophy, and this was a really interesting find. Again, you just never know what you're gonna find going used bookstore shopping. But this is Being and Time by Martin Heidegger, and this is his classic work of almost impenetrable. I'm not able to say it, but it's impenetrable. There, I think I almost said it. But it's really dense and really hard to read. Um, big book of phenomenology and existential philosophy. It's his most famous work, obviously, and this is here in its entirety. I think this is an edited edition. Yeah, it's a revised translation, a translation from the 50s that Heidegger himself actually approved of, but I think it's only been revised in 2010, and then with notes and an introduction. And this is it's a almost brand new edition with with no notes in it or no annotations, just a perfectly good copy. You just see it there for a couple bucks at the used bookstore. And by the way, this is not on my Western Canon reading list, mostly because I don't think I can force my way through this thing in its entirety right away. That's why I'm just gonna buy selected works, or an anthology, or whatever you would call it, of Heidegger, and then I'll see if I want to leapfrog into this thing. But I have a copy. The next is also a work of philosophy. It's more recent though, but and I've heard of it a bit, kinda. And I don't know what to make of it. It was just so cheap though, from a dense book of philosophy, that I just had to pick it up. And this is Ronald Dworkin, Justice for Hedgehogs. And what I understand is this is him arguing in his most comprehensive work. Ronald Dworkin argues that value, in all its forms, is one big thing. That what truth is, life means, morality requires, and justice demands are different aspects of the same large question. So something to do with arguing about value as the one big value, or one big important question in life, or something like that. And this book is from 2011, and it's Harvard University Press. I've heard a little bit about this book before, but I never really thought about picking it up until you see it for cheap. And then this next book is this one is an interesting find. This one is The Literary Guide to the Bible, edited by Robert Alter and Frank Kermode. And this book is from the 80s. It's exactly what it says. It's not a religious look at the Bible at all. This is literally them treating the Bible, or each book of the Bible, the Christian Bible, really, as a piece of literature, as any other. And so they have, it's a collection basically of essays, and they have a scholar. Each scholar is assigned a certain book of the Bible, and then they write about it as a piece of literature instead of a work, a moral work, not a moral work, but a religious work or a historical work. It's just a literary approach. And you might recognize Robert Alter's name. He, within the last 20 years, he'd been translating the Hebrew Bible, or what the Christians call the Old Testament. And he, within the last couple of years, recently completed that work, and now it's available for W.W. Norton publishes his entire Hebrew Bible translation with notes and a long introduction, or multiple introductions, I think. And this, I don't think he even started translating the Hebrew Bible before when he edited this, because this is from the late 80s. But what a find it was. This is exactly my type of book, a literary book, look at the Bible. I've been looking for books that also treat the Bible as a political book, because obviously the Bible is one of the most influential books ever written, and a political look at the Bible would be really interesting. The last 3 books for this part 1 is the Norse Myths by Kevin Crossley Holland. This is introduced and retold by Kevin Crossley Holland. The Norse mythology, Norse myths. This is a really striking cover. I've actually seen this book before. I had it on my wish list at one point. For some reason, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Middle Ages and medieval history, but for some reason Viking history and Viking myths have never really appealed to me. Usually that's one of the main reasons why people love the Middle Ages, but they've never really sparked my interest all that much. But Norse mythology is undoubtedly influential and certainly interesting to learn more about, and so I picked this one up. There was another Norse mythology retelling, but this one has obviously been reprinted many, many times. I think this is from the 80s when this book was first published, and it's still in print today, I think. So obviously this one has had some lasting influence, while that other one, I've never heard of it before, and it was a pretty old hardcover. And like I said, I'm not terribly interested in Norse mythology all that much, and so this one I think will do just fine for me. The next book is The Complete Fairy Tales of the Brothers Grimm. This was a huge find. I guess I should say it was translated and with an introduction by Jack Zipes, including the famous original 210 stories plus 40 tales that have never before appeared in English. And this was a huge find because this book is actually on my Western Canon reading list. I wanted the entire complete works of the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, and I didn't know which edition to get because some of them were way more expensive than others, but I don't know. It wasn't clear to me which ones were complete and which ones weren't. But this one advertises it as exactly that, as a complete works. And it's quite big. I believe it's over 700 pages. And it's a big edition too. So this one was a great find. And the last book for part 1, this one is an interesting find. It is King Arthur and His Knights by James Knowles. Nice big children's book here. This is published by Children's Classics. That's a nice spine, isn't it? And it's got illustrated by Louis Red, there's an H in there, Red, and I believe that's his artwork. And then you got stuff like that periodically throughout too, and then a wall of text. And I'm a sucker for anything King Arthur, and so I've been trying to collect as many retellings and anything I can get my hands on about King Arthur, scholarly books as well. And I never heard. I think I only recently heard of this guy's edition, and I'm sure it's in the public domain. But getting a big illustrated hardcover is quite attractive, and so that's what I did when I saw it there. And that's it for part 1. I'm gonna just film part 2 right away after I do this, but I don't know if I will post it right away. It might be too tedious for anyone to watch, but anyway, thanks BookTube.